Good morning, class.
Good morning, CS2.
I'm CS2 Turnpaugh. Today we're going to be going over food service organizations and their duties and responsibilities. A little bit about myself. Been in the Navy for 10 years. Was stationed out in San Diego. Stationed on a cruiser. Did a couple deployments. Worked a couple jobs in there, from cook on watch, to galley watch captain, galley supervisor, up to records keeper, even all the way up to doing bulk store and custodian. So I have a little bit of knowledge to give back to make sure that you are getting the proper knowledge and at the end of this training. Are there any questions on my introduction?
No, CS2.
Okay. So by the end of this course, you are going to have a greater knowledge when it comes to the food service organization's duties and responsibilities, as well as you're going to receive 2 college credit hours from this training. So, are there any questions?
No, CS2.
All right. So our objectives today are going to be to identify responsibilities of individuals in the food service organization, as well as identify the different jobs within the food service organization. Are there any questions on my objectives today?
No, CS2.
All right. So we're in a training environment, so in the event anyone feels unsafe, we have the universal training timeout. Can I get a demonstration on that? 1, 2, 3.
Training timeout.
Perfect, thank you. Also, in the event of a fire, we're going to exit out this door, where we're going to go down the ladder to our nearest exit, where we're going to muster in the parking lot with our class leader, who's going to be Seaman McKenzie. We're all going to muster Seaman McKenzie. When Seaman McKenzie says we're all good, we're going to wait for the fire department to tell us it's okay to resume training, if at all possible. In the event of an active shooter, we're going to darken the classroom. We're going to barricade ourselves in here. We're going to get ourselves under cover underneath our desk. We're going to silence all cell phones. And we're going to wait for local authorities to let us know it is okay to resume our training. Are there any questions on safety?
No, CS2.
Awesome. So, some classroom norms that we're going to have today, okay? As you can see, we're not going to be sleeping in class today. We're going to be gainfully employed so that we're paying attention and understand what happens at the end of this course. Also, if you go to the restroom, you can just stand up. We're all adults. Just go ahead, exit the classroom, go to the restroom, and come on back. And cell phones, we will not be using them today. We will silence them and make sure that they are not a distraction for today's training. Does everyone, any questions on our class norms?
No, CS2.
Outstanding. Well, without further ado, we're going to get into our lesson, which brings me to Naval Supply Systems Command, or NAVSUB. So, some things that NAVSUB does: they issue monetary allowances, they issue instructions and directives, administer subsistence funds, as well as nutritional guidance. You probably ask yourself, why nutritional guidance? Well, we're all culinary specialists, so when you're on the ship, you're going to be serving food. The crew's going to ask you, how many calories in this? How much fat is in this food? They're going to ask you a lot of those questions. And NAVSUB's going to issue out those documents to let you know that whenever you make spaghetti, it's going to have X amount of calories in it. Are there any questions on NAVSUB?
No, CS2.
Awesome. We're going to move on to our next slide then. Which brings me to the Naval Food Management Team. So, Naval Food Management Team like to assist ships and shore activities in training and raising the standards in the food service organization. They provide training and assistance. So about every 6 months, Navy Food Management Team, they're going to come on out. They're going to check out what you're doing. On day 1, they're just going to assess. They're just going to watch. See how it is you run your daily operation. Day 2, they're going to come in. They're going to tell you some pointers, maybe some things where you can improve on. They're going to tell you some stuff maybe that you're doing good, and they want to emphasize that. They want to keep good practice in place. Navy Food Management Team is a good tool to keep in your back pocket when it comes to being out in the fleet. Are there any questions on Naval Food Management Team?
No, CS2.
Awesome. So, which brings us next to the commanding officer. The commanding officer is overall responsible. They're there to ensure that safety is being properly maintained. Any instruction they put out, they want to make sure that it is being followed. So, food service organization falls within the commanding officer's ship, which then means the commanding officer is in charge of that. They're going to designate somebody to do a little bit more of the little things for them, right? They're going to designate someone to be in charge of the food service division. They also sign the Pledge of Service, which ends up happening as well. Are there any questions about the commanding officer?
No CS2.
Awesome. Which brings me to the food service officer. All right. As I said, the commanding officer is going to designate somebody a little bit to do more in food service than them. And the food service officer is who it does. They're going to sign the general mess returns and is financially responsible and accountable to all general mess operations. They're also going to recommend advancement in rating, as well as ensure general mess operation instructions and regulations are followed. So the food service officer, the big thing to take away from that is they are financially responsible. Anything that deals with money, the food service officer is involved in that. Inventory, that's money. They're in charge of that. Are there any questions on the food service officer?
No CS2.
Awesome. Well, we're going to move on to our next slide, which brings us to the senior CS, or the leading CS. Your senior CS is typically, it can be a chief. Most of the time it's going to be a chief. They're the most senior enlisted person assigned to the food service division. And they're going to plan menus, or the 1090. They're basically going to come up with a plan for the day that everyone is there to follow. If your leading CS is on point, then the rest of your team is going to be on point. So the leading CS plays a very vital role in this whole organization. And they're always going to supervise everybody, as well as ensure that the highest level of cleanliness are being followed within the division. Do we have any questions on the leading CS?
No CS2.
Outstanding. Well then, we're going to move on to the records keeper. So, the records keeper, they requisition food, they ensure sufficient food stock, they maintain the general mess records, as well as prepare inventory, submit reports, and maintain financial returns. So, what does that mean? The records keeper is like the secretary of the division. They're going to keep everything in order. In case anybody was to come out and try to audit us, they're going to have everything organized. They're there to be designated in writing by the food service officer to stay organized and maintain all finances. Because at the end of the day, finances need to be accounted for and can get the food service officer in a lot of trouble if it's not accounted for. Does that make sense?
Yes CS2.
Are there any questions on the records keeper?
No CS2.
Awesome. We're going to move on to our next role, which is the watch captain. So, the watch captain, they're in charge of the food preparation room, or the galley, as well as they have to sample all food. Before food is even to touch the line and go to the crew, the galley watch captain has to touch it so they can ensure that it tastes right, because they're the last stop before it gets to the crew. They also ensure that the galley routine is maintained and followed. So remember back how we said the leading CS plans menus. Well, it's the galley watch captain's job to go through and make sure that that menu is followed, making sure that everything the leading CS needs done is being done. That's their job. Very important role within the food service organization. Do we have any questions on the galley watch captain?
No CS2.
Awesome. We're going to move on then to our next slide, which brings us to the end. So, do we have any questions over anything that was covered?
No CS2.
Awesome. Well, if there's no questions on your end, I have actually some questions for y'all. So, who signs the general mess returns and is financially accountable and responsible for all general mess operations? Seaman Salonis.
It's the food service officer, CS2.
Outstanding, yes. The food service officer, great answer. It is. They're financially accountable, responsible for general mess. They're gonna make sure that everything is accounted for. Great answer, Seaman Salonis. So, my next question is, who maintains the general mess records? Seaman Garcia.
The records keeper CS2.
Bingo, the records keeper. The records keeper is going to maintain general mess records. That is a great answer. Awesome. So, which brings me to the end of everything. And so, today you learned about the duties and responsibilities of the food service organization. You gained a little bit better knowledge at the end of this course. You also gained your 2 college credit hours. Congratulations. So, a little bit about safety, okay? Remember, we're in a training environment. In the event you feel unsafe, Universal T is in effect. So let me get that. 1, 2, 3.
Training time out.
Outstanding. In the event of a fire, we're going to exit out this door. We're going to go down the ladder well into the nearest exit in the parking lot. with our class leader, who's gonna muster us. We're gonna wait for the okay from the fire department to say if it's okay to continue training. In the event of an active shooter, we're gonna darken the classroom. We're gonna barricade ourselves in here. We're gonna get underneath our desk, where we will then wait for local authorities to tell us it is all right and safe to continue training. So, without further ado, I'm CS2 Turnpaugh, and this was your training on the duties and responsibilities of the food service organization. Thank you.